Welcome to It's Good to Talk, this summer edition. I'm your host, Emma McLean, and I want to try something a little different. I want to use this limited edition series to focus on the most important person in your life, and that is yourself. I want to create the space for you to think, for you to reflect, and space for you to plan what you want from 2026. Let's get into it. Hi, it's your friend Emma. You got to the end of the year. Welcome to the first episode of the summer edition of It's Good to Talk. If you are listening to this on launch day, it's the 30th of December. So you've almost got to the end of the year. Hopefully you have a little bit of space in your mind, maybe a little bit of space to think, space to disconnect, except from this podcast, obviously. And that's really what I've intended this first episode to be. It's to create some reflection space for you to think about the year that's just been, and then the year that you want to have next year. I guess I've been doing this planning process that I want to share with you today for 5 years. And I want to share it with you because it has really worked for me. It is quite simple. It's very what I call kind of helicopter, like it's rolled up. It's very macro, and it's kind of fun as well. So I want to share with you a planning process I have. And the way that I would suggest listening to this podcast is for you to listen all the way through. And then as you listen to it, if it's something you actually want to do with yourself, then I think re-listen to the podcast. Gather some materials and re-listen. I think for you to do this really well, you really need to have a space where you can concentrate and some paper. Post-it notes are really good. You know, I did used to work in the corporate world, so obviously Sharpies and colourful pens are always good. Felt tip pens from your children's colouring in pile are also good. So if you think it's a practice you want to do, listen to the whole episode, then assemble some materials, come back and listen again, but actually do the practice. And if you want to buddy up with a pair, someone else, maybe your partner, maybe another friend you're on holiday with, do it. Because it's when you're with a partner that this experience is really amplified. So I would suggest that as well. Let me introduce you to the Glorias. So the Glorias is something I've been doing for 5 years. I've done it predominantly with one friend of mine, but we have enhanced it or expanded it to be a couple of friends over the years. And really it was, when you're in business with yourself or for yourself, it's kind of lonely. So it was really good to meet up with another person who was in their own business to kind of share out loud with someone the things you were proud of in the last year, the things you learnt, and the things you want for the next year. So that's effectively what the Glorias is. But why do we call it the Glorias, I hear you say? Well, I really like music, and you don't need to be concerned. I'm not going to be suggesting a Taylor Swift song here, but there's a very cool song which only very old people like me will know, which is called Gloria by Laura Branigan. Look it up. And the words don't make a whole lot of sense in that song. In fact, the words are slightly disturbing. Gloria, I think you've got my number. I think you've got the alias I've been living under. So we don't listen too much to the words, but it's quite a funky song. I'm such an old person, that word funky. And the reason why it's called the Glorias is when we do this practice, we are standing up, we have music on, and we are walking around the room. And we do that because I think you have different ideas when there is music on, when it's a bit of lightness, and also when you are walking. That's why I think post-it notes are quite good, because I think for every sort of question I ask during this process, if you can put one answer on one post-it note and then put it up on the wall, you can then move those post-it notes around, but you're standing up when you're doing this stuff. And I think that changes our thought patterns. So this is called the Glorias because predominantly when my friend, I'll call her Jennifer, arrives, we put on Gloria and we dance around, and then obviously we have other songs. Again, songs that might have meaning for you, but songs that just make you feel good, because that's what we're trying to do, is make ourselves feel good. So let's get into the Glorias. The concept of the Glorias is helping you to step out of your story. It's telling your story to someone else. And look, you get to decide what parts of your story of your last year that you share, but it's really trying to witness what happened in the last year, the things you were proud of, the things you want to work on, that kind of stuff. And, as I say, I've been doing it for 5 years. And as an output of the Glorias, what I always do is create a 1-page plan for my year. I laminate that because I love a laminator. I always refer to that 1-page plan throughout the year. And it's a really good sort of navigation tool for me, I guess, when I think, what am I meant to be doing? What is this? What is the point? And I think this process is relevant even if you don't have your own business. I have done this with friends who are in paid work, and they find it really useful because it really helps them to get in the driver's seat of their life and figure out what they want from a year and what they got from last year. Because, one of my most favorite quotes is from Gretchen Rubin, who wrote The Happiness Project. And she says, "The days are long, but the years are short." So how are you going to use your year next year? What if we could learn from what we learned from last year and plug that into next year? That is what all the Glorias is for. So if this sounds like you, let's begin. So what I want you to do first, again, I'd really love you to be in a space where you can concentrate, where there's no distractions. Maybe if you want to take yourself off to a cafe, do that. I think it is good if you've got wall space or you've got a flip chart to put your post-it notes up onto. But I think let's start with 2025. Okay, let's start with the year that's just been and do a bit of a high-level review. So these are some of the questions, you might want to ask yourself. So the first question is, what am I proud of myself for? What am I proud of myself for in 2025? Now, when you do this, just start writing, even as I'm talking. Write one idea per post-it note. If you don't have post-it notes, write them in a list, but just write. Don't judge your ideas. Just write them. What am I proud of myself for? And look, I think do whatever works for you, but I always think quite broadly. So when I think about what am I proud of myself for, I would kind of lump them into things like, what am I proud of myself for in my career this year? Like, what are the big things that have happened? Maybe I put my hand up to facilitate a really big meeting and it felt really scary, but also really good. And I got lots of great feedback. Write it down. Maybe at work, you've launched a few different campaigns, ideas, products. Maybe you've solved some really tricky customer problems that you can specifically remember and point to. Write those all down. What are you proud of at work? Maybe you had a tricky situation with a manager or a colleague and you found a way through. Maybe you established a new community at work. Maybe you made friends with someone at work. What are you proud of yourself for at work? Maybe you were very boundaried about working 4 days a week. What are you proud of yourself for at work? Another kind of way that I look at this, because for me, service is a very important value. Is I've often asked myself, what am I proud of myself in terms of how I have contributed to the community, or how I call it how I have given back? And look, again, this is me. It's not necessarily you, but for me, it has been important. And given I have more capacity now because my kids are older, what am I proud of myself for that? It might be that I volunteered for the Pink Ribbon Day to collect money. It might be that I volunteered to be a netball coach at my kids' schools. I did a pink ribbon walk. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, community stuff has often revolved around schools. Maybe you were the class coordinator. Maybe you helped with a Halloween disco. What are you proud of yourself for in terms of service or community? And look, again, I know that's not everyone's bag, but I mean, maybe for you, exercise or sport is really important. What are you proud of yourself for that? Are you proud that you went to pretty much all the practices this year, that you made time for it? So keep thinking, what am I proud of myself for this year? And just write down one thing per post-it note, put it on the wall under a banner of 2025. What am I proud of? Another thing you might want to be proud of yourself for is being a mum or a dad, being a parent. What am I proud of myself for this year? It might be that you took the kids camping in the school holidays and you're proud of that. It might be that you really managed to help your kids with setting up a homework schedule. Maybe it's things you did with your kids in the weekends that you'd made a deliberate sort of effort to do. But what are you proud of yourself for as a parent? Again, that's something for me that has evolved. So probably not every year I've sort of put that parent frame around. But again, if it feels right for you, what are you proud of yourself for? Maybe it's, again, it could be about boundaries. It could be about being less of a people pleaser when it comes to your kids' friends' parents. I don't know. This is about you being proud of yourself. And then I think, what are you proud of yourself just for being you? Some of the things I'm proud of myself for reading certain books this year, for going to my book club, for seeing a few shows and writing. I always write down the shows I went to see. One of the things that I have experienced in the last 5 years is a beautiful thing called the frozen shoulder. It's a perimenopause symptom. And I was proud of myself for going through that and navigating the system to get the medical care that I needed. So this is broad, right? Because when does anyone sit down with you and talk through, what you are proud of yourself for? So really take off any judgment, because you're going to be creating a real cool artifact, which you can look back on over the years of all the things you're proud of yourself for. And I think when we start a practice for being proud of ourselves, that really changes our mindset inside. So that's the first question for 2025. What are you proud of yourself for? The next question for 2025 is, what did you learn about yourself? What are the things that you were like, yeah, that didn't work? Or, okay, I said I wanted to go to the gym 3 times a week and that didn't happen. What did I learn about myself? What might I have needed? So that's the next question. What did I learn about myself? And I think, what did I learn about myself really is a question that is going to be important for next year, because you might plug some of those insights into next year. It's kind of like, what are the things that I kind of wish might have been a little different, that could have gone a little differently? What could I have been in control of a bit more? And again, when you are listening to this, what I would recommend is for each of these questions, once I've talked through some examples, put the podcast on pause and just write through. Put some music on, put your version of Gloria by Laura Branigan on. But yeah, there's these first 2 questions for 2025. They're very simple, right? because this is about you trying to distill down the things that matter to you. What am I proud of myself for? And what did I learn about myself? What might I wish had been a little different? What did I learn about myself? I think that question, is really important. Like, I think if I'm actually I have a lot of my yearly plans here, and I was reading through them, and in terms of what did I learn about myself, I've got things like trust myself. You don't need to ask everyone else what to do because like that's one of the things I learned about myself, I guess. So that's the first section. What am I proud of myself for, and what did I learn? And then the next section of this exercise is looking forward into 2026 and asking yourself, what do I want to be proud of myself for in 2026? So it's kind of like forecasting ahead. And you probably all heard of this big rocks analogy, that if you think about time being a glass jar, if you put your big rocks in first, all the little rocks will like snuggle in next to them. But if you put all your little rocks in first, there's going to be no room for the big rocks. And so when I say, what do I want to be proud of myself for in 2026? I want to know, what are your big rocks? What do you want to be proud of yourself when you look back on? Maybe it's like that I joined a tennis club and that I went to club nights. Or maybe it's like, I want to be proud of myself for applying for a promotion next year. Maybe it's, I want to be proud of myself for having different kinds of conversations at home with my partner. Maybe I want to tame my people pleaser tendencies. Maybe I want to read more books. What do you want to be proud of yourself for in 2026? So again, you can just pause this podcast and think, and think again, chunk it up. What do I want to be proud of myself for in my career? What about in my family? What about in my community? What about just for myself? Maybe you want to carve out more time for yourself. You want to be proud of yourself that in December next year, you look back and you go, wow, yeah, every week on a Saturday morning, I had time that I carved out and agreed with my partner, or if I was parenting alone, I got help to go to a Pilates lesson, go out for coffee with a friend and walk home. Whatever is success for you, right? What do you want to be proud of yourself for in 2026? And chunk it up into different versions, different sort of parts of your life. And again, have a think about the things you learned about yourself from this year. How might they show up for next year in terms of what you're proud of yourself for? For me, I think this doesn't have to be incredibly detailed, but it does have to be the big rocks. When I look at my plans for the year, some of them are quite detailed, like, rent an office space, get more structure into my business, get 4 new corporate clients, join a tennis club. But I think for me, it's just about getting a bit of clarity at the beginning of the year around what your big rocks are. So that's the third element to the Glorias. Again, one idea per post-it note, and dance around as you're putting these up. What do you want from 2026? What do you want to be proud of yourself for? And then the final element is your word for the year. And I've had a word of the year for about 5 years, and I absolutely love this concept. I mean, I'm going to give the concept credit to Gretchen Rubin from the Happiness Project, because I first read about it with her. But I'm aware that probably other people have talked about word of the year as well. For me, my word of the year has been really useful as a touchstone. Whenever I get to a crossroads, I can refer to my word of the year to give me a bit of a roadmap around what I need to do next. It really tries to crystallize what you want from the year. And also full disclosure, sometimes I have more than one, and sometimes it's an actual phrase. So let me read out my one. So I've had abundance, and that is a word of the year for that year. For me, I really wanted to have a mindset of abundance, and that is that not a limited mindset, that there's enough for everyone. Success is abundant. Just do it has been a word of the year. Like, stop overthinking, just do it. That's been really useful. Nourish has been a word of the year. Scale, love, aroha has been one of my words of the year, to really reflect. And I think it was a lot of it is just love yourself, right? Because I've spent a lot of my life trying to change myself, get better, be different. And what if I'm enough? So that's been one of my words, love, aroha. Sparkle, that was one of my words, and also let them. And if you know Mel Robbins, you'll know let them. And also if you know Mel Robbins, you'll know it's not just let them, it's let me. That's key. If you haven't read that book, it's excellent. And then this year, my word of the year has been 3 words: blow shit up. I stole that word from Cindy Gallup, who's a very cool woman to follow on LinkedIn. She's an advertising executive in New York, Madison Avenue, of course. And she likes to just call it for what it is. And that's kind of what I wanted to do this year, because I feel like we can be really nice about stuff and kind of be encouraging and be polite, but I don't know if that's working. And so I've tried to be quite, I'm not saying controversial, but upfront, direct. And that's been really useful for me this year. Blow shit up. So what's your word for the year for 2026? A year that crystallizes what you want from the year. Put this on pause and again, have a think about word of the year. Right, so you've got what you're proud of for 2025, what you learned about yourself in 2025, what you want to be proud of yourself for 2026, and your word of the year for 2026. Now, this is a bonus step for everyone who's doing this with a partner, is there is real power in you talking this through with someone else, because they're all different levels of learning, right? And so for us to think is one level, for us to write is another level, but for us to talk it out loud, that's a whole other level. And if you can share with your partner what you have, what you're proud of yourself for, and what you want for 2026, and your word, and if your partner can just listen, maybe ask clarifying questions, as the words come out your mouth, you might change some of your ideas. It might firm up more about what you want from 2026. So if your partner can ask questions like, when you say take more action, what do you mean? And you might say, well, I want to have delivered 4 workshops every month. I mean, that's a much better thing to put down, right? Like, make them tangible, because you will thank yourself because you can evaluate them a lot easier. So take some time to share with a partner, and maybe you'll refine and evolve what you've got. Right. Excellent. You should be very proud of yourself. It's a very, very simple exercise. And I want to share with you what I do with this output now is I create this one page. I put the year across it. It's just one page, one A4 page. You do you, but I handwrite this. Some people might want to do it digitally, and maybe you want to put it in Canva. Have you used Canva? You should. It's very cool. I put the year across the top, I put my word of the year, and then I put my key goals, which will have emerged from the 2026, what I want to be proud of myself for. And then I break them down into two different columns, which is in order to achieve that goal, what do I need to do? And also, what do I need to be? Right? So for the to do, it might be, create and launch a podcast, create some worksheet assets, and launch a quarterly program. So that might be my to do, but my to be is I need to be boundaried. I need to be future focused. I need to be self-compassionate, and I need to be structured and with a routine. Because I got this idea from James Clear, which is a great book, Atomic Habits, as he said that it's a great book in general, but I just think, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And I think it's okay to have a goal, but you need to know the system that's going to get you to that goal. And for me, the system is the being. How do I need to be? And it might be that you like, if one of your goals is to get more time back in your week, you're going to have to be boundaried. You're going to have to say no to things. So put that on your to be, and then keep yourself honest through the year by checking in on this stuff. So what do I want to do, and what will I need to be in order to do that? And look, put on your one pager whatever you need to. Maybe you've got cool quotes that you love. I've got one of mine is, don't look back, you're not going that way. But have a little one pager that you can review all through the year when you get a bit stuck. I mean, some of my other to be's have been just start, believe the good stuff, time block. Yeah, I mean, obviously I had some Taylor Swift quotes on some of my plans. The bravest thing I ever did was run. I can still make the whole place shimmer. Again, you do you. But this is about creating a one page that you can refer back to that really helps you. So that's all I wanted to say. I hope you found this exercise interesting. We've got another episode coming next week. These are all going to be focused on you. All going to be focused on you and your own personal development, because I think in the summertime we have a little bit more breathing space. Parents are doing the hardest job in the world, and I wanted to put this together free as a resource to help you get back into the control of things you can control in your life. And I think we can control being proud of ourselves and having a little plan for what we want for ourselves. I think those are really good things to be under our control. So let me know if you found this exercise useful. Send me your one pages, emma@worksforeveryone.co.nz. I hope you're having a great holiday. Happy New Year. Onwards and upwards. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the summer edition of It's Good to Talk, please forward it to a friend who you think would also enjoy it. If you've got any other feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message on Instagram, Works for Everyone, or on LinkedIn, Emma McLean. Connect with me, send me a message. I'd love to know what you're all thinking about this. This podcast was 100% funded by me and my business, Works for Everyone. We are a professional development agency that partners with leading New Zealand businesses to help retain and grow their working parent talent. We do that through executive coaching, keynote speaking, and workshops. Hope you're having a lovely summer. Onwards and upwards.